Well, good morning. Imagine my chagrin when I got back from my early to middle of the night workout and sat down to make a video for my other channel when all of a sudden I just get this inkling that I should check the news. And I go to Vatican.va, VaticanNews.va, and there it is that Benedict XVI has passed away. And he did so at 9:34 a.m. local time in Rome. I'm going to refrain from engaging in any of the speculation of what comes next in the church kind of stuff as a consequence for a couple of days. Maybe Monday I'll have a video on what we can expect because by then it'll have been 48 hours and I think it will be less gross. But you're going to see that today from a lot of people. You're going to see that. You're going to see that. You're going to see that. Sorry for that echo. I have my own thing up in another window so I can make sure I can see you guys in the live chat. But you're going to see a lot of that, I think, coming in from a lot of people today, and it's going to be really disappointing. And I wish people would refrain. But that having been said, we have. I'm just going to go over here to the main article here. It's from again VaticanNews.va. This is the official state media of Vatican City. So farewell to Benedict XVI, humble worker in the vineyard of the Lord. The 95-year-old Pope Emeritus Benedict XVI passed away on Saturday at 9:34 a.m. in his residence at the Vatican's Mater Ecclesia Monastery. So he passed away at home. And the article goes like this. Pope Emeritus Benedict XVI has returned to the Father's house. The Holy See press office announced that the Pope Emeritus died at 9:34 a.m. on Saturday morning in his residence at the Mater Ecclesia Monastery, which the 95-year-old Pope Emeritus had chosen as his residence after resigning from the Petrine ministry in 2013. With sorrow, I inform you that the Pope Emeritus Benedict XVI passed away today at 9:34 a.m. in the Mater Ecclesia Monastery in the Vatican. Further information will be provided as soon as possible. As of Monday morning, 2nd of January 2023, the body of the Pope Emeritus will be in St. Peter's Basilica so the faithful can bid farewell. All right, so if you're going to be in Rome, this is going to be your once in a lifetime chance to visit a Pope lying in state, basically. And if you're watching this from Italy, I would make a trip. Unfortunately, I can't. I'm in half a world away. And we all know that the article goes on to tell us about, the stuff we talked about in the last few days, how his condition had been worsening, how everything was pointing to this coming. I didn't expect it quite so soon, honestly. In fact, I frankly expected he would last probably another several days into the coming week, such as my ability to predict things when it comes to the more basic aspects of life. And I really wish that people would stop saying things like the person I just put in timeout, where they just go and start screeching about how he was one of the worst enemies of the church, yada, yada, yada. It's like, look, can you cool it? Basic charity should prevail at this time. And I'm going to try to say be like that about Francis too. And I am no fan of his. You know what I think of Francis if you've watched this at all. You know that I think he is one of the worst enemies the church has ever had, one of the worst popes in history. When he dies, it doesn't mean I'm going to sugarcoat the truth. We're just not going to sit there and, sling attacks. People need to cool it. Okay? This is a great time for temptation for people to fall into sin publicly. And I really wish people would use some self-restraint when talking about this stuff. But yes, for those joining us, the Pope Emeritus, as they call him, has passed away. He did so, it's about 1 o'clock in the afternoon in Rome right now. So he passed away about 3.5 hours ago. That's the news that we have. It's official. And you're going to see a lot of ugly things being said, not just from modernists either. You're going to see people who are going to make clickbait. You're going to see people who do all sorts of silly things. It's going to happen today. There'll be no self-restraint from people. So please, maybe call people out and say, look, can you hold off on on all this wickedness for a day? There is a time and a place for us to start really looking critically at what's coming next. I just don't think, he has the day he passes away is the day to do that. That's just me. I'm old fashioned though. I have this idea that maybe we should be self-restrained about things. But yes, please today, if you can, offer a prayer for the repose of his soul. This is the time to do it. if you have the ability to go to a daily mass. Weirdly, I always found that in the Novus Ordo, daily masses were not that hard to find, except on Saturdays. That was always hard to find back when I wanted to do that. I couldn't find one on a Saturday to save my life. But people will say that, well, today is a day that you should go visit pray in front of the sacrament, go to the exposition of the Blessed Sacrament, whatever it is, and pray for the repose of his soul. Offer your rosary for him. Say the traditional prayers for the dearly departed. All of those things. And there's probably prayers for the repose of a deceased pontiff online. You can go Google these things, and they should all come up pretty easily. Jackie Ann says 3.5 hours ago, 6 a.m. on the East Coast. Yeah, he died at 9:34 Rome time. Rome. And Rome is several hours ahead of us. It's 5 a.m. here in central Oklahoma. And I saw this at 4 o'clock. And so they're about 8 hours or so ahead, give or take, depending on what time zone Rome is in. Let's take a look here in the chat. Someone posting in Latin. But yeah, so again, I didn't rush here to be the first. I just saw that it was time to talk about this. William, I will disagree that he was traditional. We haven't had a traditional pope since Pius XII, and really only for the first 2/3 of his papacy. There just hasn't been a traditional pope for a long time, and it's why we've had as many problems as we've had in the church. But Benedict was far and away the best that we've had since Pius XII, like without question. Even like people who have very hard line sedevacantists will look at Benedict and say he was probably the best out of the lot. That's not hard to say though. Yes, Jackie, I think I'm the only one up. I keep weird hours. I just do. I go to bed pretty early in the evening and I get up functionally what is in the middle of the night. Partially because I go to the gym in the morning and it's nice when there's no one there. I don't have to worry about custody of the eyes if it's just like me and some random dude on the other end of the gym doing our thing. But this is you're going to see these stories are going to come in hot and heavy, I think. The Vatican News right now has got has put up his official biography. You're going to have all sorts of interesting stories, and I've got something here that I'll read from you. It's a collection of quotes that have a kind of a continuous thought about what he really thought about the Novus Ordo Mass, which is not what most people would expect, especially those who are just wanting to drag him through the mud, reminding everybody how evil he was, apparently, as if that's the appropriate thing to do, before his body is even cold. But yeah, so Vatican News has got this Death of Pope Emeritus Benedict, his official biography. And it goes over his time, how his father was a police commissioner and how he was born in Passau, Germany in April of 1927 on Holy Saturday, and how he was baptized on the same day. Man, they tell us these days you have to wait a week, but it used to be that they got you baptized as soon as possible. How, they go over how it wasn't exactly the best thing to grow up in Germany in the 1930s and 40s for obvious reasons. You remember when the secular enemies of the church used to drag him through the mud because he was in the, we'll call it the youth program there at the time, as if he had any say in it. He studied philosophy and theology in the higher school of philosophy and theology of Freising at the University of Munich from 1946 to 1951. He was ordained in 1951 and began teaching at basically in high school right afterwards. He got his doctorate in theology in 1953. I wonder if you could find his thesis online somewhere, but his thesis was called People and House of God and St. Augustine's Doctrine of the Church. He had become by 1957, he was a respected professor of fundamental theology. And I mean, he would go on to be a paridi at Vatican II, which is where a lot of the people who dislike him intensely will point out that he was involved with a lot of the more, modernizing of the church there. And that's objectively true. That was things he was involved in. But he had an illustrious career. And it's why people expected him to follow John Paul II, because of his role in the hierarchy. He was like the obvious choice for essentially maintaining the status quo after John Paul II versus Cardinal Martini, or as we found out later, Jorge Bergoglio in 2005. They actually tried to get Bergoglio in 2005. They came pretty close, But if John Paul II had resigned or passed away in the 1990s, you would have gotten Pope Martini probably, or you would have gotten Pope Ratzinger early, one of the other two. Sean is right. Vatican II was Benedict's baby. In fact, I do not agree at all with the hermeneutic of continuity, because there's just too many inconsistencies between what the church says after the council and what the church said before the council in ways that are like so opposed to each other that it's not just a development of doctrine. But at the same time, I respect the attempt to try to make things coherent, because you have to have a coherency. Otherwise you start running into some very serious problems. And that was Benedict's life work, really, was the hermeneutic of continuity, to prevent really a rupture from being actualized. Now, since, in the last few years, you've seen the, Cardinal Roche and Francis and others have said there is no continuity, that the hermeneutic continuity doesn't exist. In fact, I think it's in Traditionis Custodes, or one of the accompanying statements afterwards, where that Francis chastises people for the hermeneutic of continuity. The official line is the ecclesiology of the church has changed. The vision of the church of itself and the mission of the church of the world has changed since the council. That's a problem, because that's a statement of rupture. And it's oddly similar to what traditionalists tend to say about Vatican II in the time beforehand. Where Glenn, the proper term for them is not Beni Vacantis. That's a slur for them. I'm not one of them, but the proper term is Beni Plenist. I'm going to see if I can get someone from that perspective. No, not Patrick Coffin, someone else, on maybe to talk about this in the coming week, because they're very measured, and you should be subscribed to their channel anyway. I won't say who they are, because I haven't had a chance to really talk to them yet. They're, it's 5 a.m. on a Saturday. They're probably not up yet. Checking my phone here at the side. They have not responded to my text message that I sent them, because it's too early in the morning. Somebody here in the chat mentions Nostradamus. I'd be very careful with Nostradamus, simply because everything he wrote was so vague and ambiguous that it could be read any way you want to. It's why I don't take anything he really said all that seriously. It's just it's written in poetry that you have, and it's so ambiguous that you can you can almost interpret it any way you want, which is why I tend to stay away from him. But where will the Beni Plenists go for here? I don't know. Because some people will say, well, they'll all be sedevacantists now. That's not true, because sedevacantism is a specific position in the church. Sedevacantism is defined essentially as saying that there has not been a legitimate pope since 1958 or 1962. I've seen sedevacantists disagree on whether John the 23rd was actually a pope or an anti-pope. But sedevacantists don't believe Benedict was ever pope. They called him an anti-pope, just like with John Paul II and John Paul I and Paul VI. They all called them all anti-popes. That's not what a Beni Plenist is. A Beni Plenist believes that Benedict XVI was the legitimate pope. It's a different position to be in. What it means, I don't know. But that's why I want to get my guest on a live stream or something next weekend, hopefully, or maybe during the week, to ask him. Let the split in the church commence. Careful what you wish for, though. Careful what you wish for. It won't be Dr. Mazza. I've read Dr. Mazza's case for the position. I'm not convinced by it. That's why I'm not there. They will essentially be in the same position as the early seeds when there were still legitimate clergy. Possibly. It'd be a good question for me to ask the person, because, I mean, the person I want to ask would know when it comes to that sort of thing. I look better than you do at 5. Well, I've been up since about 1. I get up. I have 2 small children. I live near a municipal airport, and because I do YouTube for a living, I have to be able to record and things. And so middle of the night is when I can get my work done. And then because, when you have a 1-year-old and a 4-year-old, guess what happens? They're very loud all the time. Nostradamus resorts to obscure heraldry to prove predictions. Maybe. I don't know. I've also heard that he was involved in some sorcery kind of stuff, but that might be an allegation from his opponents. So I don't know. I just steer clear of the whole thing. Apparently PF will retire now. I doubt it. I expect him to hang on until the synod and synodality is completely done in 2024. If not, things that in the aftermath, the mop-up operation afterwards, if at the very least. And I actually don't expect him to retire until he becomes so physically infirm that he can't. And the reports are his health is improving. Remember earlier in the year, during the summer, people expected him to announce a retirement because the media was crowing about how bad his health was. Well, the reports more recently are that his health is improving, and for him, I'm glad. I wish no ill will on Francis. I just wish he'd stop trying to destroy the church. Forever Young, I haven't watched Taylor Marshall's video on why Benedict resigned. I don't watch that much Catholic content, mostly because I don't want to accidentally copy something someone else said. I usually go watch things afterwards if it's not like so timely that the story is completely irrelevant at that time. Maybe I'll go watch his video. I don't know. I have my own theories on why Benedict resigned, but I need proof before I say them, because they would involve me submitting FOIA requests, Freedom of Information Act, with the U.S. government, and I know how to do that, actually. I just don't know if I want to put a target on my back. So, because I have a different take on a possibility of his resignation being invalid due to external pressure. Ultimately, though, that is a ruling that a future pontiff will have to make. No layman can make that ruling, can say definitively this is the case. That is up to the magisterium of the church, and really only a future pontiff or maybe ecumenical council could decide. And the church is in no position right now to have an ecumenical council that would have anything to do touching on the questions of orthodoxy. Candle in the Dark is in Melbourne. Over in Melbourne, did you hear this news when it broke? I'm curious because you're several hours ahead of us here in the United States. I'm curious if that was it. Does the passing of Benedict XVI speed up the timeline of the synod? No, the synod's already been slowed down. They extended the synod. Benedict had no material power in the church, whether he was really truly pope still or not. He could maybe get on the phone with a couple bishops, maybe, and that depends if Gonswein was really just his secretary or his handler. If he was his handler, then Benedict wasn't talking to anybody without Gonswein's permission, and we can only speculate. Let's see. Candle in the Dark says it's now news at the moment. It's 10 o'clock in the evening. Okay, yeah, you are several hours ahead. You are like 17 hours ahead of us. Raven Wraith says she's waiting for Anne Barnhart's reaction. I haven't read Anne Barnhart in a while, but I would agree that in general that it's more likely that Francis and company will accelerate the dismantling of things. It's either that or he'll have a pain of conscience and slow things down, although I doubt that one very seriously, but it's a possibility. Fox News reported it. Wow. Okay. I mean, I'm not surprised that much that Fox did. Time in Perth, 7:18. I spent a Christmas in Perth. It was weird going from, at the time living in Portland with 40-degree Fahrenheit temperature, cloudy and rainy, to high 90-degree temperature in Fahrenheit in Perth. When we landed in Sydney, I think I only had 20 minutes to make a connecting flight, but I still ran to a bathroom to change into shorts because I knew I was already wearing a heavy coat and it was going to be bad. Let's see. I'm not sure who Neil Gonzalez is. Should I continue the Catholic through this? There's no reason to join the Orthodox. The Orthodox are heretics and schismatics, so don't do that. And they've got their own problems. They're literally run by their ecumenical patriarch was a member of the the clandestine police up there behind the Iron Curtain. Why would you do that? Why would you join a group like that can't make even basic rulings on various dogmatic problems? The channel Ascent of Mount Carmel actually has a recent video where he points this out, that they can't make any basic rulings on dogma anymore. There's just nothing. Why would you do that? You're no better off. You're at that point joining a Protestant group with sacraments. I'm very hostile to people leaving the faith. Outside the Catholic Church, there is no salvation objectively. God can work on individuals as he sees fit. That's his prerogative. But outside the Catholic Church, there's no salvation. Don't leave. There's no reason to. Romans, 9:30 p.m. Eastern last night. No, 9:30 a.m. Rome time this morning. 9:30 a.m. Rome time this morning, which would have been, I think, around 1:30 Central Standard Time in the U.S. or 1:30 Eastern, depending on how the time zones work. Kenneth, could you please be careful with that WWG1, WWGA stuff in my comments, please? That stuff is all flagged by our hosts. All of that stuff is. And honestly, if you're still following the R-1 guy online, you need to wake up and smell the psyop, because that was fake. The whole thing was fake. How does Fatima play into this? I don't think the Fatima message specifically talked about Benedict. I think the Fatima message talked about the apostasy in the church coming from the very top of the church, from the office of the papacy. Probably had more to do with Paul VI, honestly, and the aftermath of things that would come. Vatican said the body of Pope Emeritus will be placed in St. Peter's Basilica from the 2nd January for greeting of the faithful. Yes, I just mentioned that from an article on this. When will Pope Benedict's funeral be? They haven't announced yet. That'll be announced later today. And I would imagine that there'll be a good time to go to Vatican.va or to the YouTube channel for any of the English-speaking Catholic news outlets like EWTN's Catholic channel or Catholic News Agency or any of them, to check to see that, because they'll be live stream. I'm sure they'll live stream it. Any news on the fake Sister Lucy? No. Sister Lucy Truth is a better source to follow for that. They've got some event coming up later in the year. That's all I know. The fake Sister Lucy stuff's not likely to have any new news for a long time. It's just the way it is. You know, what about with just a Catholic dad putting a quote from something in there? But yes, do I think Francis will start blowing everything up more now? Maybe. It depends. He has said he's running a program given to him by those who put him in the papacy. It could just be he'll just continue doing what he's doing. Or he may feel completely understrained. There has been a rumor that there will be a Traditionis Custodes 2 coming out later in the year, or 3, I guess we count the Desiderarii document from Christmas of last year. But there's been a rumor that there's another one coming in the spring. I don't have details, and I'm hesitant to talk more about it, simply because I could make an entire video, and probably will, about the number of false rumors that Rome floated out there just to confuse people. Most recently with the claim that Bishop Vilmer was going to become head of the CDF or whatever it was, given a guy being a out-and-out heretic. And that turned out not to be true. But they floated it through certain sources, and Verate Coeli reported it. And now Verate Coeli is being hammered by people, and I think they're being hammered without good reason. We should be restrained with rumors, and that's fine to remind people of that. But what we're dealing with right now is, I think, Rome floating rumors just to try to figure out who's leaking information to the public from within their own ranks. So got to be careful with that stuff. Will Francis step down and call for a conclave? Why would he do that? He has literally no reason to do that. Could his will reveal anything shocking if they let it be public? I tend to think that he was essentially a glorified prisoner in the Vatican. His documents will not, his writings, any statement that does not go with the program will probably never see the light of day, or at least not for a very long time. Are the Benevacantists seed now? No, and they're not don't call them Benevacantists. That's a slur. Call them Beniplenists. That's what they prefer to be called. And I'm going to try to get a guest on in the coming days on a live stream or something to talk about this. But we need to be very careful how we talk about these things and talk with charity. And remember, I'm trying I have this deep desire to not get into too much what's coming in the coming days thing, because there's no reason to do that. Right now, we have the Pope Emeritus has passed away, and people should be praying for the repose of his soul. So go to the sacrament today. Go to confession today. By the way, today's the 31st. Did you know if you go to a chapel, you go to a parish, any parish, and you say the Te Deum today, and then tomorrow and you go say what is the other one? Post it on the Return to Tradition Facebook page. If you're still on Facebook, follow Return to Tradition there. I sometimes post my videos there. It's a good backup place. But let me see what the other one is. I posted this there. There's a chance for plenary indulgence that no one ever takes advantage of. And it's unfortunate, and you should do it. But let me see here. Come on. They changed the way this all works on Facebook, unfortunately. It's so today, if you pray the Te Deum today, December 31st, at a parish, and then tomorrow at a parish, tomorrow's a Sunday, so you'll be at a parish for Mass, the Veni Creator Spiritus, and you have to do it under the usual conditions, you get a plenary indulgence. Why would you turn that down? That also gives you a chance 2 days in a row to pray in front of the tabernacle for the repose of the soul of Joseph Ratzinger, Benedict XVI. These are things you should be doing anyway. Take all the opportunities the church gives you for indulgences. Maybe pray to have the merits of the indulgence applied to Benedict in his time, because he probably needs it. We all do. The most saintly person walking the earth would want you praying for them in their final hours and at their passing. So please do so with Benedict. Even if you think he is a saint, still pray for him. Pray for him that he had the perseverance in his final hours. Joseph, I've never been on the Benedict is still the Pope team. He clearly didn't think he was. And because people who say that also turn him into a villain. You turn him into a villain by allowing him, by putting him in that position. And I respect him enough not to turn him into some evil figure, because to have him step down to do a fake resignation, to put an anti-pope, knowingly put an anti-pope on the throne of Peter, and then allow himself to just be silenced basically for a decade, turns him into a willing participant and a villain in all of this. And I'm not willing to do that. I don't have contempt for him. I disagree fundamentally with his theology, especially his Vatican II things, but I don't detest the man enough to think that. Should Benedict have made a public confession before he passed? How would he have been able to do that? They did not let him say anything publicly. Paul Kramer is by far the best interview for this subject. Maybe. One, getting Father Kramer on would be difficult. And two, he comes from a very specific position, and I actually know someone else who would be just as good. If Bergoglio doesn't step down, you'll definitely go to the SSPX and discern the Orthodox. Don't discern the Orthodox. They're schismatic heretics. They literally deny dogmas after the Catholic Church defines them. I mean, come on, that's heresy. There's nothing wrong with the SSPX, no matter what some Catholic media outlet will want to tell you. Go there. It's a much better place to be. I don't care about the politics of this Latin Mass society versus that Latin Mass society. Just stick in the church. What about Conchi? I don't know. Do I? Sasha says that a lot of Benedict XVI writing since his resignation has been censored. Yeah, I agree. I've read his letters. I know enough that the last thing that I trusted he actually wrote was the material that got leaked when he and Cardinal Sarah wrote something back in 2018 or 2019. Do you remember that? They had a book before the Pachamama debacle and all the consequences of it, where he said something that was definitely not on the same page as Francis, and then he didn't hear from him again until recently, the last few weeks. And everything he wrote in the last few weeks seems to have been very on par, with endorsing the work of the Synod on synodality. But beforehand, it was just different. And I think that they've been very careful with what he was allowed to have released. And that's why he could have, written something that said he completely rejects Vatican II, all that stuff, full rad tread. I doubt that happened because he was too much on Team Vatican II for that. But you would never know. He could have made a, public confession about something on his conscience from the time he was running the church, and you would never know because they would just keep that under wraps. Raven Ray says he did the Te Deum after Saturday TLM, so that's a partial. There, yeah, and go do the Veni Spiritus or the Creator Spiritus Sanctus or whatever tomorrow, Sunday at Mass, or before Mass or after. You do it at a chapel and you get a plenary indulgence, but make sure to go to confession and be in a state of grace for it, because you have to have and not be attached to particular sin. And I think the attachment to sin is really like, congratulations, you've gone to confession, you're in a state of grace, but you still got the temptation lingering for whatever it is that you deal with. Let's see. But yeah, we should be praying for him first and foremost, not speculating so much on what's coming next. I'll do a video maybe Monday about what we can expect to see coming. Because by then you're going to, I suspect, start seeing some whispers from Rome. But then again, if he was really the Pope is prisoner theory with him is true, then it wouldn't have mattered that much because they were clearly just going full steam ahead without him anyway. Out of curiosity, what is it about the Mazda position that you do not agree with, Anthony? I don't agree. It's too legalistic. The entire, Munus Ministerium thing is too legalistic for a divine office. We were talking about a divine office, and people want to apply modern canon law to it when canon law is full of loopholes. And modern code of canon law was declared by the guy who put it together for John Paul II to be trash and needed to be redone. He said the same thing about the Catechism of the Catholic Church, by the way, the 1995 Catechism, a catechism that I only ever reference when I'm making a video. If I want a real catechism, I go to the Catechism of Pius X, which is based on the Catechism of Trent. The Baltimore Catechism was criticized by many as being very liberal too, by the way, comparative to what earlier catechisms are. And the Catechism of John Paul II is dense. It's weirdly dense. If you go read like the Catechism of Pius X, it's simple question followed by an answer, and that answer then builds to the next question. So you can start from the beginning and go all the way to the end, and it has a logical flow to it. You don't need, the church to tell you that you have to be against the Moloch ritual. You should be able to like suss that one out for yourself using basic logic. But I don't agree with the Mazda thesis. It's too legalistic. I don't agree with any of them because they're just too legalistic. Is the Pope bound by canon law? He should be. Not because there should be a check to him, but because what good is there to have a code of law for the church if the Pope doesn't follow it? There's no reason. But at the same time, it's a divine office, and it supersedes. It's not bound so much by these things. Beloit Cruz thinks he was strongly encouraged to step down against his own wishes. I tend to think that's accurate. I think that's also to give me a hint of where I'm coming from and why a FOIA request is what I'd have to do to get my evidence. I think a lot of that pressure came from outside of Rome and came from my own government, actually. Didn't Benedict have a tell-all book to be read after he died? He might have. If he did, good luck if it ever seen the light of day. Let me put it this way: if he had sent that to a Catholic publishing house, what would happen? Do you think they'd run it? I doubt it. What would likely happen is you would probably get some sort of communique from Rome, basically threatening to pull all their credentials and drop the hammer on them if they published it without Rome's approval. And all the publishing houses would agree, except unless he gave it to Angelus Press. But given that Benedict didn't have the best relationship with the SSPX, I doubt that he would have sent that to them. And anybody more radical than the SSPX, it wouldn't have been sent to them. So it would have been sent to somebody like Ignatius or Tan or Baronius or the equivalent in Europe. And they'd probably fall in line if Rome told them not to publish anything. I'm cynical about these things, perhaps, but I doubt you're going to see some sort of bombshell, Benedict XVI final statement that says, anti-Pope Francis this and Vatican II bad, restore the things to the 1939 status quo in the church or whatever. You're probably not going to see that, not from him. There are people putting out in the chat that the various ecumenical patriarchs by name are as bad as Francis, and it's true. Bartholomew was quoted by Francis in Laudato Si numerous times. I know, I wrote my doctoral dissertation using Laudato Si as a roadmap for nonprofit organizations to pursue sustainable development. And it became very difficult to write as I became more radical. And it became like the mental gymnastics game of figuring out how to make this thing work, because reading Catholic social teaching from before the council became very obvious that before and after the council, there was a huge difference in how the church was operating in the world with this stuff, and it just didn't make any sense. But you saw in Laudato Si Francis quoting positively Bartholomew and these others, and they're all on the same page. Do I believe Benedict had career regrets? Sure. It'd be almost impossible not to have some kind of regrets at the end. Do I believe Benedict was a good man and a good Catholic? I can't read the good Catholic part. I don't have the ability to read his soul. Do I believe him to be a good man? I mean, sure. Does that necessarily mean he was in a state of grace when he went? No. I assume he was, because he would have received the sacraments. But I will tell you that people need to pray for him. That should be the biggest concern. I'm not going to put Benedict on trial here. That's not the point of this conversation. Benedict's funeral will be celebrated by Francis on January 5th in St. Peter's Square. That must be new news. Thank you, Deus Volt 528 at 5:28 a.m. He received last rites on Wednesday afternoon after the Holy Mass. Yeah, okay. I'm not wild about receiving your last rites several days before your passing. Um, I know that he went to mass. He participated in a mass yesterday. So yeah, I know he received our Lord. Probably would have gone had that priest hear his confession again. I would, if it was me, I would have. Um, just pray for the repose of his soul. That's all you can do, really. When do I think his assistant will do an interview about his last words? Probably within the next week, within the next few days. I'd be surprised if Archbishop Gonsfine didn't say something in the next few days. I would also be surprised if Gonsfine wasn't made a cardinal at the coming consistory. There has not been a consistory announced yet, but in the next month or two, you will hear an announcement being made that a consistory will be held in August, because Francis has done one almost every year since 2013. And Gonsfine will probably be elevated to a cardinal and given a post in the Roman Curia. What are my views on John Salza and the SSPX? I'm pro SSPX. I'm also pro FSSP. I don't care that much about their internal politics. That's not to say they're not important. They are important. Their internal arguments are very important, but now is not the time for people to trash one group or the other. Not when if things look like they're basically on fire. John Salza, didn't he stop going to Latin Mass and started going back to the new Mass and became like a big promoter of the reform of the reform? I mean, that was disappointing to see, but his background didn't make that surprising to me. Francis has just begun to punish the anti-Moloch priests. Yeah, no, you're going to see more of that. You will definitely see more of that this year. But how could Bergoglio possibly be the Pope? Well, there's more positions than Benedict is the real Pope or Francis is the real Pope. There's also the Benedict resigned and Francis couldn't become Pope because of heresies. He had heresies that the day he stepped out on that loggia, people were calling from Argentina to journalists in Rome trying to warn them about how bad he was. They called him a heretic when they made those phone calls. You can go find interviews with John Venari where he talked about that. I think it was with John Venari and Father Gruner from 2015 when they were talking about that. It could be that they're just worried that the see is vacant, and I don't mean that in a sedevacantist thing. Again, sedevacantism is a formal position that says there hasn't been a pope since 1958 or 1962, depending, but that none of the popes that you've seen in your life have been legitimate. That is a specific position. I do not hold to it, and I'm also not saying that the see is vacant. I'm saying that is just another alternative that no one ever really dives into, and no one ever makes that case for it, even though it would go a long way to explain a lot of problems. I mean, have you noticed that since Benedict resigned in 2013, the world has gotten every year a little crazier, a little weirder, a little darker? Things have gone more and more towards the cliff since that time. It would explain a lot. A lot. Let's see. Candle Dark says that this is why they've got a 1954 Latin English order of service as a Latin English Bible and read 2 or 3 days a week. Yeah, no, it's good. If you can find a pre-1955 Latin Mass to go to, that's great. The FSSP, by the way, were the ones who had most of those. The SSPX officially keep to the 1962 liturgical norms, but the FSSP were starting to have the pre-1955 Holy Week, which was great if you could find one. The FSSP parish that I go to about half my time did not have that available, unfortunately. The Holy Week liturgy used to be astonishing before Bugnini, the same man who wrote the New Mass, changed it in 1954 for Pius XII. The fact that he died on New Year's Eve is deeply symbolic. The end of an era. Yeah. Go check the feast day today. What the feast day is. I can't remember offhand. I remember looking yesterday and seeing that yesterday was just an octave day in Easter, or in the octave of Christmas. But we just had the feast of the Holy Innocents, and Saint Stephen, and these other deeply, richly symbolic feast days. And so go check if today's a major feast day that I'm just blanking on because it's 5 a.m. Let me know. Book was by Pope Benedict and Cardinal Sarah on the priesthood. Yeah, that book was the last thing that I trusted he wrote, partially just because of the storm it caused. Ever since then, the very few things we've gotten have been very pro-establishment, pro-Vatican. If you're just joining us, by the way, because according to my StreamYards here, we have 560 people watching this live stream right now. Make sure to offer a prayer for the repose of the soul of Benedict XVI, who passed away at 9:34 a.m. local time in Rome. The news is from the Vatican, from VaticanNews.va, which is the equivalent of the NPR or BBC of the Vatican. So it's from official sources. This is not, an internet rumor. This is straight from Rome. They are reporting this, and so just make sure first and foremost to pray for him. And second, let's hold off on the what comes next in the church. How bad is it going to be stuff? People are asking. I understand the curiosity for that, but there are going to be people who are going to try to capitalize on this to put their name out there to get clicks, and it's gross. Because I can make a video right now titled "Francis's demonic plans for after Benedict XVI" or whatever, something like that. And that video would probably get 50,000 views in the first day, which is a lot for me. I'm not going to do that. Not today. I will probably have something Monday. The videos I already had ready for the coming weekend, they're not going to get scrapped, but they're going to get delayed. It's because this is going to be the biggest story in the church. But we're talking about a soul. We're talking about the soul of a supreme pontiff, someone who is a priest. And priests, according to the saints, according to all the mystics, all the trustworthy sources going back to our Lord, all basically say that priests get judged more harshly than we do. So please pray for Benedict XVI. Whether you think he was the greatest villain in the church in modern time because of cloaking himself in orthodoxy, or if you think he was a holy man, a saint, whatever you think, he needs your prayers. Pray for the repose of his soul. It's Catholicism 101 stuff. What's not Catholic is someone passes away and we canonize them immediately. We turn them into a saint. You see this at Catholic funerals. My wife already knows that when it's my time to have that, I will have a traditional mass and a traditional funeral where you will not get a homily turning me into a saint, but people being taught about the 4 last things and why they need to pray for me. Please pray for him today. That is your first job. That is your first job today, is to pray for the repose of his soul. Today, there's also the ability to gain today and tomorrow. If you say 2 prayers, one today at a parish and one tomorrow at a parish, you can gain a plenary indulgence. That also means that you can also offer the indulgence up to our Lord for penance for Benedict XVI, for Joseph Ratzinger. You can do those things. As a Catholic, you probably should do those things. And may God reward you richly for your generosity when you do that. It should only take you a few minutes to do. One of the prayers, the one today, Saturday, December 31st, is go to a parish and pray the Te Deum. And if you don't know what the Te Deum is, you should know what the Te Deum is. But if you don't, you can find it. It's in the Bible, but you can go and actually just Google it and get your answer there. Is the Eucharist valid in the Orthodox Church? Sure. That doesn't. Validity of the validity of the Eucharist should not be your distinguishing factor about whether you should go somewhere or not. Presence of heresy should keep you from going places. Otherwise, you're receiving the Eucharist, but being a heretic is a sin. Preaching heresy is a sin. And if you are imbibing of heresy, it's theological poison. Why would you put yourself in that environment? 2023 will be interesting for the world and the church, putting it mildly, says Michael Velosa. Yeah, that's true. It's buckle up, folks. 2023 is going to be interesting, to definitely put it mildly. Pray for Archbishop George Gonsalves as well, because he has been a Pope Benedict for years. In that, Christy says that she heard in an interview that Gonsalves said that Benedict was like a father to him. Yeah. Pray for him. I hope that the rumors that he was his handler and not his assistant are not true. I don't want George Gonsalves to be a villain in this story. I don't trust him, but that's because he was also a personal secretary to Francis and Benedict early in the first or second year of Francis's reign, and then he got moved immediately over to Benedict full time. Wonder if Francis will let Benedict have a traditional time, or will it be a banjo mass? I I don't know. I would expect it'll be at the very least the typically reverent new mass that you see in the Vatican. I mean, the masses in the Vatican aren't typically, clown masses. They're the unicorn reverent Novus Ordo mass, typically. If you see, I mean, it wouldn't surprise me if you let him have a traditional mass. You can have a traditional mass in St. Peter's. It's just really hard to get pulled off. But for the Pope Emeritus, I think they'd allow it. Michael Velosa, 2023 will see Francis make his major move against tradition in the TLM. Probably. Again, for those joining us, there is a rumor that there will be a follow-up to Traditionis Custodes this year. I don't have the details, and I'm hesitant to mention more than that because there have been solid rumors from solid sources that turned out to be nothing but gaslighting from Rome. Things like, most recently, the Cardinal Vilmer being made the head of the CDF or the DDF or whatever they call it now. That turned out to not be true. There was also another one about Francis at the consistory going to name a coadjutor pope, basically a bishop of Rome who will become pope automatically after Francis resigns or dies. That turned out not to be true either. In both cases, major Catholic figures ran with the story, though, before getting it really verified. And so rumors, take them with a giant grain of salt. And that's why I'm not going to say more about the Latin Mass thing than I already have. Let's see. Brian Burrow thinks that Benedict will have a Latin Novus Ordo Mass. Masses in Rome are more traditional. Like, yeah, I mean, you would expect Masses in Rome in the new rite to be more said with more reverence than even the most of the reverent Masses said anywhere else in the world. You would expect them to take it more seriously, even if they often don't enforce liturgical norms outside of Rome. Jacob, the SSPX are not in schism. They have never been declared to be in schism except by internet media outlets and cardinals who overstep their authority. But the church has never said the SSPX are in schism. They have a sort of a ambiguous canonical status, and they're going to keep having an ambiguous canonical status until finally until the situation in the church is sorted out. Because I don't think the SSPX are going to, endorse Vatican II and the new Mass, which is what they've been told to do. It goes back all the way. Like right now, I have a video up from Archbishop Lefebvre. It went live this morning, or it will later this morning. Let me go check. Let me go check here. But it's on obedience, and that video is going to go live at 7 a.m. Central Standard Time in about an hour. And it's an Archbishop Lefebvre address on obedience, and he flat out talks about how he was told to endorse the new Mass and endorse the revolution in the church, and he refused. So I don't blame him for refusing. Canon law was on his side for everything he did. And there are people who say that the excommunication of him was invalid, and they can give you a whole list of actual canonical reasons for it. I tend to agree with them. I tend to think that history will bear it out because he's not the first bishop in history to actively resist Rome. It's happened numerous times in history, and most of the figures who did before that all got canonized. So, FSSP is where he currently goes as Romans, but again, diocese and parish beholden to whims of Francis Bishop. We are a cash cow for the diocese, so they let us stay. Yeah, well, I spend half my time at an FSSP parish. I consider it the home parish. I don't have a problem with the FSSP. I just don't agree with them entirely on everything when it comes to Vatican II and things. But I don't feel like my faith or the faith of my children are in danger being there. Let's see. EWTN is talking about the upbeat mood at the Vatican as a German commentator says he cried like a baby. An upbeat mood at the Vatican? Come on. It's one of the things that I find fascinating is that people in these times will often not hide what they really think. They will not hide their feelings. They will not hide who they are. They will let you know. And if that's true, if there's an upbeat mood at the Vatican, that says a lot. That speaks volumes. I want to see more independent reporting on that. If you could email me a link to, if you find that in print, email it to me, because I've got my email addresses in the description box of every video. Email me a link to that, and because that's disturbing, but not surprising. Again, the things that I say about them, you should tell you, it tells you what I really think of most of these people, that they aren't really Catholic, that this is not just doctrinal differences of opinion, like it's a difference of opinion on the execution of doctrine in the practical realm, like what doctrine looks like when you put it into practice. That's not this. There's more to it. And if they're cheering, if they're in an upbeat mood, I'm not surprised, but I am disappointed. At least partially disappointed, because you would think that they would have the wherewithal to keep their feelings close to the vest. That's really, I mean, you can put on a sad face and keep your cheerings off, to yourself until you're behind closed doors. But I'm not that surprised. Let's see. Yeah, Triple S says this feels ominous. Don't have a good feeling about the coming year. I mean, at this point, this decade looks like it's just one of those steadily, incrementally gets worse and worse as time goes on. I mean, in some ways, things improved once we got to 2022 in a sort of the secular realm. I mean, you could go shopping again, right? You could go to work again. So those things all improved, but things just started getting worse in other places, and now this happens to cap off the year. Let's see. Your way, a future pope will condemn Francis in some fashion. I'm absolutely certain of that, Michael Velosa. I have no doubt in my mind that that's where we're headed. That you're going to have a future pontiff make some really very hard line rulings against Francis, and frankly, things that came before him. I suspect then that Francis will be used as the entry point for it. But you'll probably finally get a formal declaration about the nature of canonizations in the church, about their infallibility, about how long minimally people should wait. You'll probably see that. People are noticing that as much as they might love a particular pope or two from the Vatican II era, people are beginning to notice that it's a little odd that, for 500 years we didn't have a single pope canonized. You had Pius V, and then the next pope to get canonized was Pius X, with no one canonized between them. And then all of a sudden you get John the 23rd, Paul VI, John Paul II canonized, John Paul I on his way to canonization, and probably Benedict XVI, unless they turn him into a scapegoat. Do I think the passing of B16 will be a significant part of the future? Possibly. It could be one of those things that we will look at when in the future, that future historians of the church will say that this was an inflection point of some kind. It's hard to tell. I mean, there is that small chance that Francis will, have a crisis of conscience and moderate himself a little bit in light of this. I don't think that's going to happen before anybody yells at me for saying that, but there's a remote possibility. Or they could take this as an opportunity for something else, or they could just keep going. Those are your three options, right? Those are three logical options. Setiplenism is another option. Well, Setiplenism has never been really well defined, even by the proponent of it, the main proponent who came up with it. The idea that every one of the popes since the council were popes, but because of their material heresies, they've all lost their authority, but the see was not vacant. There's a lot of theological problems that need to be worked out with that position, and no one has. Are those who say B16 is still Pope now Sedevacantism? No, because Sedevacantism is a formally defined position that says there has not been an authentic true Pope since 1958 or 1962, depending who you ask, but since 1958 generally. That all of them were anti-popes, that John Paul II was an anti-pope according to the Sedevacantists, that Benedict XVI was an anti-pope, that John Paul I and Paul VI and John the 23rd were all anti-popes according to the Sedevacantists. To say that the see is vacant and to deny that Francis is pope, it does not make you a Sedevacantist, because Sedevacantism has a definition, and we should use the definition that things have when talking about things, and not just co-opt terms. That is what our secular enemies do. So they take a word and they redefine it, or they erase words and replace them with new things. We should not do that. If you have dedicated in any way to the truth, you should not do that. You should actually use the definition, respect the definition of words. And Sedevacantism has a definition. Like I said earlier, I'm going to try to get somebody on, not today, but I'm going to try to get somebody on as a guest in the coming days to talk, who is a Beniplenist, that is the term that they preferred, to discuss what they think this means and to answer that question. And it's a figure many of you have heard of. I'm not going to say who it is in case they say no, I'm not going to announce a guest before they, have a chance to come on, but um, because they'll also be able to give you a very measured response. And no, it's not Dr. Mazza or anybody like that. I don't hold to that position. It's not a position that I ever held to, and I'm not convinced by the main arguments for it. Now I think it's irrelevant with his recent passing. Besides, we should be more focused on praying for the repose of his soul. Offer your rosary for him today. Kelly Cottrell says, I thought Francis said the TLM would be ending on May 20th, 2023. You can always go to the go underground SSPX or another. He has not officially announced that. A lot of the dioceses didn't want to implement Traditionis Custodes, so they made the mistake. The bishops there made the mistake of writing to Rome asking for guidance, and they got a form letter back. That was clearly just, there was a blank, like you could practically see the blank spot where it said the name of the diocese or the name of the bishop, and where they just typed it in. That basically said that the Latin masses in their dioceses had to end by, I think it was May 23rd. But that was not a formal decree from Rome. It was guidance for that diocese. That having been said, those have been on my mind because, again, there's a rumor that there's going to be another Traditionis Custodes document coming out this year, probably before the spring. And it wouldn't surprise. And it's been described as the most draconian document on the subject yet. But again, take that with a grain of salt. A lot of the rumors we've been hearing from Rome have not been true about things, like as I've just said a couple minutes ago. Is today any kind of feast day? Well, let me find one. I'll go look. I don't have my calendar here right next to me. Well, in Brazil, it's the feast of Sylvester, but it's a feast of Saint Sylvester. He was Pope Sylvester I, a saint who served as pope from 314 to 335. Medieval legend makes him responsible for the conversion of Emperor Constantine. So yes, it is a feast, but it's not on the same scale as the Feast of the Holy Innocents or Saint Stephen or any of those. But yeah, it is the feast of Saint Sylvester. And if you've read the book Lord of the World, that is the name of the sort of the end times pope, is Sylvester II or III. I'd recommend that book. It's if you can get past the weird sci-fi language, because written in like 1905 or something, the author was hilariously off the mark when it came to technology. But if you can get past that stuff, the actual story is spooky. Can't believe that there's no pope and hasn't been in a while. Not that there are no valid priests or sacraments or orders today, except for Eastern rites. Right, and that's one of the reasons why I couldn't get on board with sedevacantism. It's just if we were talking for a decade, I could see it. 6 decades is a bit much. It's a bit much, because at that point there comes a point where the holy orders all go away. That the only bishops and priests are the ones from the Thuc line and from the SSPX. I have a hard time wrapping my head around that one. Yes, sedepravationism is another defined position. Yes, these are positions. It's just they don't get much attention and it's because the people who adhere to them don't usually promote them. Again, if you're just joining us, Benedict XVI passed away at 9:34 a.m. Rome time in the where's the place? In the Vatican's Mater Ecclesia Monastery, where the place where he'd been living for the last decade. He passed away this morning at 9:34. Before anything else, pray for the repose of his soul. Go spend some time in front of the Blessed Sacrament. Maybe take on some fasting or abstinence. On New Year's Eve, there's extra opportunities for abstinence. After all, what do most people do on New Year's Eve? They stay up late. They have a party with friends. They do things. You could give some of that up for the repose of his soul, for penance for his sins. It's a Catholic thing to do. Today is a better opportunity than most to do spiritual works of mercy like that. Let's see. Curious Lost Beagle says the one time he prays for the Pope and he dies. Well, I mean, true, but you'd prayed for him probably because his failing health was in the news. Let's see. Always appreciate that you avoid the most salacious rumor mongering and respect the sensibilities of faithful Catholics. Thank you. I do appreciate that. It's just, what happens if you report rumors too many times? What does it do to your credibility? I mean, plus I don't like being responsible for misinformation. It's why most of the time I stick to major news sites and the outlets from our adversaries. I'm not going to be accused of misrepresenting something Pastor Jimmy Martin says if I'm quoting him from Outreach or American Magazine, right? So, I mean, come on. The Institute Christ the King has a pre-54 Holy Week. I keep forgetting about them. They're not in my area. I've never been to one of their masses. The nearest one of their masses for me is like 8-hour drive. If I'm going to drive 8 hours, I'll probably just go up to St. Mary's to go take a look at the Immaculata, which, by the way, the SSPX are opening their Immaculata cathedral-sized parish in St. Mary's, Kansas in 2023. You can go onto their website. You can go find the official dates for it. It's opening. The thing is gorgeous. People say we have lost the ability as Catholics to build beautiful buildings. I present to you the Immaculata. The thing is stunning to look at. It's right in the middle of nowhere, Kansas, which is great. Time for extreme courage, yes. Sheila, you're probably right that he's going to be blamed for the problems in the church. I mean, we saw a hint of that with the what they called the McCarrick report, which they should have called the Vigano and John Paul II report, where they basically tried to pass off McCarrick as the fault of Vigano and John Paul II. It was like so nakedly dishonest. You're probably going to see that with Benedict. I guarantee that will come. It won't happen this week, probably, but it will happen and probably happen soon. He'll be. I actually suspect he'll be the first Vatican II Pope to not even be made a blessed because of this. Curious what about the Requiem in the Vatican. That'll be January 5th, and that mass will be offered by Francis. So, if you've never seen a papal funeral, this is the time. Offer the vigil tonight for his soul. Today we pray the Te Deum after the Mass, which is traditional at the end of the year. Yes, and then there's the other one. I have it here on my thing. The Veni Creator Spiritus on January 1st. Go to confession, and under the usual conditions, if you do the Te Deum today at a parish and the Veni Creator Spiritus at a parish tomorrow, you get a plenary indulgence, and you can offer the benefits of the plenary indulgence for the repose of the soul of Benedict XVI for Joseph Ratzinger. And God will reward you for your charity. Yeah, someone says that they pray the Te Deum every day. I do too, but that's because I do the Little Office of the Blessed Virgin Mary, which is part of the devotion for the brown scapular. If you wear the brown scapular and you want to keep the Fatima message, as Sister Lucia said, you got to do the Little Office. That is not the same as the Sabbatine privilege, by the way. The Sabbatine privilege is something else. People think it is. It's not the same thing. Let's see. Omens, I was just joking when I said vibes. B16, A Time of Silence. If you wonder if his writings will be published, if they are, it'll be many years from now. They're going to bury his writings. If they do not back up the Francis program, they will bury his writings. Susan Sufer says 99% of rumors are not true. I think that the Rome is purposely releasing rumors for either to misdirect people or to figure out where the leaks are coming from within Rome. Probably the latter. It's the most simple answer. They want to know who works in the Curia that's releasing information to the public that they don't want released. So you plant things among your suspects to see what it comes out. Yeah, no, but you're right. I was really disappointed. I'm not going to name names here, but when I saw and heard that there were people immediately running with, this is what's coming next. Can we wait till he's at least until he's cool? Okay. Give it 48 hours. That's when Monday morning, I'll probably have something about what I expect will be next. I need some time to digest the thing. Yeah, Triani says she's happy that Benedict XVI was not the Pope from the alleged Third Secret of Fatima. I don't think that was the Third Secret of Fatima. Honestly, I don't. I think that they put together something. I don't think John Paul II was in on that, but I don't think that was the authentic Third Secret. You can look at all the other Marian apparitions that were warning of future bad things happening, and then that one doesn't fit. It's clear that it was something to do with an apostasy in the church, and that just doesn't fit. Let's see. I'm really behind on here. Cardinal Burke is only half a traditionalist. He's not my favorite of the better bishops. I'll just leave it at that, though. EWTN live feed commented about the upbeat mood. Oh, that sounds like after I get off of this here in a few minutes, I'm going to go on to EWTN print websites and see, because that's give an idea on a path forward. Bad bishops are the majority now. Path forward, I think that Catholic prophecy is pointing to a material chastisement that'll take care of the problem. It's not a pleasant answer, because a material chastisement means that our idiot rulers get their conflict that they want. They think that they're going to be able to remake the world with it. Instead, they're going to be destroyed, playing with fire. But it will also cleanse the church. There's one of those prophecies that said only something like 1 in 4 people will survive becoming material chastisement. That's why I tell people get out of cities, get away from cities. You want to be 30 miles from a city at least. Let's see. Future condemnation of Bergoglio will necessarily censure Montini, Whately, Ratzinger as well. Oh, probably. Look, they were all modernists to some degree, but even Pius X somewhere, and Pascendi says that holding to modernism doesn't make someone automatically a heretic. That there's there's essentially like degrees of it, and you can look at Francis and compare him and Paul VI and compare them to any of the other conciliar popes, and you see that it's just orders of magnitude difference in how they did things. Let's see. What would have happened if Francis had passed before Benedict? You would have had a conclave, and then you would have had another pope, probably a Francis II, would come up, and you would have people saying, still holding the Bene Plenis position and denying the validity of this new person. Although what would have been interesting is if that had happened, and instead of a Francis II, you got a Benedict XVII type, which is as good as you probably would get, and then it would be interesting to see if the Bene Plenis position was held too firmly by people, instead of it being just an out. And that's not to accuse anybody in particular. It's just you get the sense that at least with some people that the clinging to Benedict was because of just how bad Francis is. Yeah, Triani is correct that sedevacantism is a papal chair has been vacant since the death of Pius XII in 1958. I've encountered some sedevacantists who think John the 23rd was probably legitimate, but that none of the rest were. I've encountered a few sedevacantists who claim that the see has been vacant since the 12th century. Begin to see the problem with that. That means there's no church. All the episcopal lines are gone at that point. But yes, please pray for Benedict today before you do anything else. And when I say don't, today's not the day to be bashing Benedict. Look, were there problems with Benedict's theology and his role at Vatican II? Absolutely. And they shouldn't be brushed over. I just don't think today is the appropriate time to do it. Don't dodge the truth of the matter. There are legitimate concerns. But today's not the day. Today's not the day to, play for clickbait videos. Ooh, what's coming next? This is, doom and gloom, or yay, Francis will. None of that stuff. First and foremost, let's, pray. I would offer to lead prayer, but I'm not a priest, and I'm not comfortable with laymen doing that. I'll lead my family in prayer, and that's it. But please, take advantage of those indulgences I told you about today. Offer them for the repose of Benedict, and go to confession. Offer your rosary for him. Say the prayers for the recently departed that are easily findable online. Those should be your first things. Let's see. Yeah, James Orth reminds us about Gregorian masses. I mean, if you really, they can be expensive, and it's not because you're buying a mass. It's because you're essentially covering the material costs of the 30 masses. And there are organizations that will offer Gregorian masses. I would go find one that offers the traditional mass form. A Gregorian mass will deliver a soul out of purgatory after the conclusion of the 30th mass. Typically, the organizations who do it will say when they accept your petition, and you've made the payment, after that they will not tell you anything else after that. You will not know, because it's at that point it's just between the priest and the organization doing it. 3 or 4 years ago I did a video on Gregorian masses. I should possibly revisit the subject, but that is, I mean, if you're feeling very charitable and have $300 or $400 to spend, because you're talking about wax candles and all these other things, look online for organizations that offer Gregorian masses. They call it Gregorian masses because it was instituted by Pope St. Gregory the Great. So this is not a new thing. This is 1,500 years old or something. Michael Velosa suspects that Francis was being held back somewhat by Benedict being alive, and that now that he's gone, Francis can go full steam. We'll see. We shall see. Let's see. To give you an idea how far back I'm, were a lot of comments about St. Sylvester today. What about the Beni Vacantis? There's no such thing as a Beni Vacantis. They were Beni Plenist. Beni Vacantis is a slur. It's uncharitable to use that term. They prefer Beni Plenist. They're not going to be Sedevacantis, because Sedevacantism is a formally defined position, and they don't fit the description of it. I mean, I guarantee you, I would be surprised if Novus Ordo Watch, a Sedevacantis website, didn't put up an article or a Tradcast episode or something saying, no, they're not Sedevacantis, and then explaining to you why they're not. Call things what they are. Use the proper terminology for what they are. We're not, our secular adversaries want to redefine everything so they can create a new world. That's not us. Let's actually use the proper definition of terms. Let's see. Europe is rumbling problems and unrest. Yeah, no, paying attention to the news, it's disturbing seeing the things happening in Europe. Let's see. Repeat that, please, about the brown scapular. It's simple. If you, according to Sister Lucia, wearing the brown scapular is part of the Fatima message. And if you want to live the Fatima message, you wear the brown scapular and you say the little office of the Blessed Virgin Mary. That's separate from the Sabbatine privilege. The Sabbatine privilege allows you to pray the rosary instead of the little office for the promises of the brown scapular. But this is different. This is separate. People try to want the Sabbatine privilege to cover everything for them. My response is, why are you afraid of praying more? Praying the little office takes about an hour total a day. That sounds like a lot. Not really. The prayers of the little office don't take long. It's broken up 8 times or something during the day. It's, matins and lauds and vespers take the most time. The rest of the hours take 3 to 4 minutes at a time. You have time for it. Everybody does. Why would they scapegoat Benedict? Target of opportunity or real animosity? Both. They have the opportunity, and they clearly didn't like him. They want to place McCarrick at the feet of somebody. They tried that with John Paul II and Vigano. They would want to do it with Benedict, especially since he can't defend himself. Triani says she hopes that I goes on the RTF again. I will go on if they invite me on. I just I'm not very good at night, so by the time that their show starts, I've been up 20 hours. Just trying to catch up here. Oh, wow, I am very far behind. Very sad to hear that Papa Benedetto has died. Eternal rest grant unto him. Yes. Pray for him. Again, I'm going to sound like a broken record, but please, this is the first duty of us as Catholics. Even when a pontiff dies that you don't like, you pray for him. Next year or the year after, when the news headlines are telling us Francis is clearly in his final days, I expect you to hold my feet to the fire. I'm not going to, make videos not condemning evil things being done around him by other priests and bishops of the church. But, I will come on here and tell you to pray for him, because that's what we're supposed to do. We'll be judged by our charity when it hurts the most to do it. And times like this are clearly a test for it. Christy says she hears the cat meowing. Yeah, it's my wife's cat. The cat's like, hey, I was supposed to be fed an hour ago. Sorry, cat. Did Blessed Anna Maria Taigi's prophecy about a great pope come true yet? No, but I think that's the angelic pontiff who comes to power after the chastisement. I think it's the angelic pontiff reigns in Rome at the same time that the great Catholic monarch does in Europe, in the secular realm. I suspect that's who she was talking about, but I don't know for sure. Can we petition Pope Benedict to pray for us and for the church now? I mean, I suppose you can. I make no prediction on where his final destiny was, but I think you can. I don't think there's anything sinful in that. Can I repeat what the indulgence is? It's a plenary indulgence. You will gain a plenary indulgence today, December 31st, by praying the Te Deum, going to a parish and praying the Te Deum, and then tomorrow going to a parish and praying the Veni Creator Spiritus. And you have to do it under the usual conditions, meaning you go to confession. You can receive the Eucharist within a week. So go today's Saturday, tomorrow's Sunday. One of them is done at a parish tomorrow. I mean, go to confession today if you can. Receive the Eucharist tomorrow at Mass. Pray both of these, the Te Deum today and the Veni Creator Spiritus tomorrow. You get plenary indulgence. I suggest you offer the benefits of the plenary indulgence up for the repose of the soul of Benedict. Let's see. I'm really far behind. If I had to suggest a preference in the FSSP and SSPX for someone converting to Catholicism, which would I suggest? Honestly, probably the SSPX, and only because I think that the idea that the FSSP are going to be immune to the machinations of Rome is laughable. That document that they got from Francis to protect them was never published by Rome. It doesn't exist in the official registry, which means it doesn't exist. It exists on an FSSP website. It's at the whims of Rome. You may have an easier time finding an FSSP parish than you will an SSPX one. But beyond that, Martin Ortiz, Little Office Prayer. It's a Little Office of the Blessed Virgin Mary. I suggest the 1962 or earlier version. They dumbed it down and stripped down a lot of the prayers after the council, like they do with everything else. I have one from Angelus Press. Pray the Te Deum today for Pope Benedict. Offer your rosaries for Francis. I mean, I pray for Francis every day, just not for his intentions. Let's see. Just trying to catch up here. Will the world rumble shortly after the burial? I don't know. I don't put Benedict as a prophetic figure, so. Is it prohibited to pray for the souls of non-Catholics? No. Grace of final repentance, mercy for their souls. I mean, no, there's nothing wrong with any of that. Let's see. Heard you about reciting the Te Deum. What prayer must we say tomorrow? You don't understand. It's the Veni Creator Spiritus. I posted it on the Return to Tradition Facebook page, and you can find it by going to facebook.com/Return to Catholic Tradition. My channel name is not available for some reason in a lot of things, but it's the Veni Creator Spiritus. They're both classic traditional prayers. Please discuss why female Eucharistic ministers are not a good idea. Eucharistic ministers are not a good idea. And the whole point of having lay people at the altar is to instill in them the idea that they can be priests. That's why girl altar boys are a terrible idea. That's where you get this rebellion in the church from. You bring laymen up to the altar with the idea of waking up in them a vocation, and laymen shouldn't be handling the Eucharist. They're called extraordinary ministers of Holy Communion for a reason. They're supposed to be used only under extraordinary circumstances, like your priest being so infirm that he can barely say a Mass, let alone then distribute communion to the entire parish. But that's not how they're used. And the whole thing should be stripped down, should be abolished. If they're going to have anybody, it should be a seminarian or a transitional deacon. I would say a permanent deacon, but the permanent diaconate is being so distorted, it's ridiculous. Heaven's Eye. I tuned out Father Michel Rodriguez a long time ago. He's a fraud. Sorry, I don't pay attention to him. That's going to shock some of you. Don't care. Unsubscribe if you want. His bishop told him to stop, and he to stop with what he was doing, and he refused. And he predicted things that just simply did not come to pass. our Lord tells us to be careful of false prophets. I do not trust anybody running around right now talking about prophecy. When I cover prophecy, it's stuff that was adjudicated a long time ago. Nothing new. I won't touch alleged Marian apparitions that are happening now, because usually there's fraud involved and it's people running around. Look, he might be, sincere in what he's saying, but it doesn't mean it's coming from heaven. I mean, he's been wrong about things, and those who do authentic prophecy are not wrong. So I don't trust him. So no. He did say that Benedict would pass after Francis. And now people are trying to say, well, that wasn't a prophecy. That was just speculation on his part. Well, okay. I mean, once you're doing that, once you're engaging in that kind of defense of him, it's time to stop. I don't trust him. Can lady priestess do extraordinary Eucharistic dispensation? There's no such thing as a lady priestess. You have a layperson who is a heretic doing that. There's no such thing. You may as well be asking if a wizard can. So both of those things exist to the same degree in that they don't exist. There's a better case that wizards exist than there are priestesses in the Catholic Church. Matt, I'm not going to tell people that they should not attend the Novus Ordo. It's weird to go to a layman for those questions. Many people do feel that way, Kinsella, that they've lost a father figure. The Catholic Church, Colette, okay, the Catholic Church is the universal church, yes. But outside of the universal church, there is no salvation. Extra ecclesiam nulla salus. And the definition of that is very disputed. But if you could be saved outside the church, you had a reasonable hope of finding salvation outside the church, why would you join the church? What's the argument for joining the church when being Catholic is the hardest form of Christianity, short of the really weird fringy groups that want you to, adopt some really weird, heretical practices. Of any Christian group, being Catholic is harder than anything else, really. We have, because between the fasting and the things that we're not supposed to do, every other group out there has said, hey, let's regularize, evil practice of the world, X, Y, and Z. I'm from Portland, Oregon originally. And whatever political movement of the moment was going on, there were churches along the park blocks, just blocks from my university, that would put flags representing those secular concerns. If you want to join those groups, because there is reasonable, because you can be saved there, I guess, that's your business. But there's no salvation outside the church. There's no reason to join them. Will I lead you in praying? No, I don't lead prayers publicly. That is not what I do. I feel weird whenever I see laymen doing that. I think I would feel performative doing that, and I won't do that. I lead my family in prayer privately, and that's it. I would suggest you can let me see if let me look up a novena for the Repose of the Soul novena, and I'll put it in the chat if I find one. For this, there's the novena prayer for the dead. I found a website for a novena for faithful departed, but it looks like it's for like a website that takes you directly to downloads. Okay, some of my antivirus stuff is flagging that website. Let's try over here, novenaprayer.com, and it has a YouTube link. But here, I'll put something in the chat here. It looks, reasonably orthodox, so that's good. There it is. Are the Benedict sedevacantists? No, they're not sedevacantists. Sedevacantism is a specific position. They don't fit the bill. Sedevacantism says that there has not been a pope since Pius XII in 1958. That the sedevacantists believe every single pope since then has been an anti-pope. Some worse than others, but they've all been anti-popes. That is not what the Benedictists are. Just because someone believes the see is vacant now doesn't make them a sedevacantist, because sedevacantism is a defined thing. We should use words with their proper definition. Our enemies take words and misuse them. Let's not be like that. What will the rest of the dubia do now? The 2 remaining bishops? Nothing. I've been waiting for Cardinal Burke to issue a follow up to the dubia for 5 years now, like everybody else has. Canon 212 has a ticker. How many days it's been since the dubia was received? We're never getting a follow up to the dubia. Cardinal Burke promised one. We're probably never getting that follow up. Dean, I would be shocked if your priest at your Latin Mass this morning didn't mention something about Benedict. Even if it's a daily Mass, they don't usually have homilies, or if they do, they keep it to 2 minutes or something. I would be surprised if he didn't make a quick announcement about the passing of Benedict XVI and the offering of the Mass for the repose of his soul. I would be utterly shocked if that didn't happen. Do I think God called him particularly now because of it being the 10th year of Francis? I don't know. Why do you do Michael, why do you do the whole traditional Benedictine office? I mean, if you're doing the full Benedictine office, I guess it's probably fine. You're going to want to find a traditional priest familiar with Fatima enough to know the ins and outs of the little office. But you don't need to do the little office on top of the Benedictine office. I wouldn't think. All right. I think that's enough for me for now. So I will probably do something this week on what's coming next. Not because I want to, but because you pretty much have to. And just I never tell people don't watch this kind of content creator or this person, this Catholic or this Catholic. Just remember, you're going to see people making clickbaity things today. And I'm already preemptively disappointed in them because you saw a little bit of that a couple days ago. So let's just be restrained and not dive off the deep end with this stuff yet, okay? I have a church document going live. Well, by church document, I mean something from Archbishop Lefebvre, his sort of a 1976 explanation for why he was ordaining priest at the time and what obedience means. I felt like I should do something for him this weekend. I didn't understand really why. I do something for him once or twice a year. This was the weekend for it, and now I think I might see why. But go check that out when it goes live in 30 minutes. But make sure to pray for him. Pray for the Pope. I've said that 100 times today, and I'll say it more. Instead of we have plenty of time to see what's coming. Most of the prognostications will be wrong anyway. Other than very vague ones like it's going to get worse. There's my prediction. It's going to get worse. But we'll see. Okay? Anyway, pray for the repose of Benedict XVI. Pray for Francis. I pray for him every day. Not his intentions, though. But pray for them. And remember, there are indulgences today. Go to your parish. Pray the Te Deum. And then tomorrow, pray the Veni Creator Spiritus. You can find it on details on that on a post I have on Return to Tradition on Facebook page. Usual conditions apply. Don't pass up these opportunities for indulgences. I hope you have a blessed day and a blessed new year.